Emmanuel Macron calling for an end to the war in Gaza. Following France's lead, Monaco, Belgium, Andorra, Malta and Luxembourg also formally recognized Palestine from the General Assembly podium. This brings the total number of recognitions to 3/4 of UN member states. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has firmly declared that he will not allow the establishment of a Palestinian state. Far-right members of his cabinet have escalated tensions by threatening to annex the West Bank, a move aimed at making Palestinian statehood impossible. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, stated that Israel is committed to continuing its military campaign until all hostages are returned and Hamas is completely destroyed. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has called for an end to the genocide in Gaza during her press conference ahead of the UNGA. She said Mexico's foreign minister will present a message of peace, aligning with the international community's call to stop the violence in Gaza. According to the Mexican media, this marks the first time Sheinbaum has rather publicly described the Israel-Gaza conflict as a genocide. Families of Israeli hostages set up a symbolic Jewish New Year table outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Jerusalem residence, placing photos of loved ones still held in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel is pressing ahead with a new ground offensive in Gaza city, ordering the evacuation of a key hospital as the conflict deepens. 48 hostages remain in Gaza, around 20 of them believed by Israel to be alive, after most of the rest were released in ceasefires or other deals. Hamas-led militants killed some 1,200 people in the October 7th attack that started the war and abducted 251 others. Russia's defense ministry has reported that its air defense forces shot down 81 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles. These UAVs were destroyed over several Russian regions, including Belgorod, Bryansk, Kaluga, Kursk, as well as the Republic of Crimea and the Black Sea airspace. The United Nations Security Council held a tense session as NATO allies confronted Russia over violations of alliance airspace in Estonia and Poland. On Friday, Estonia reported that 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered its airspace, lingering for 12 minutes before being forced to withdraw. This followed early incursions when more than 20 Russian drones breached the Polish airspace, prompting NATO jets to intercept and shoot some down. At the Council, the United Kingdom warned that Russia's actions risk sparking an armed conflict, while Russia denied the allegations, calling the meeting a theater of absurd. US President Donald Trump has signed an order labeling the left-wing Antifa movement a domestic terror group. The move follows the killing of Trump ally, conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Critics warn the move could become a pretext to silence dissent and go after political rivals. Antifa is a shorthand term for anti-fascist that is used to describe diffuse far-left groups. And there have been questions since Trump first mooted the designation last week about how to define it. In the order, Trump described Antifa as a militarist, anarchist enterprise using violence to suppress free speech and overthrow the US government. The US pharmaceutical regulator has approved the drug leucovorin that is for the treatment of autism, as US President Donald Trump unveiled a series of announcements, including an unproven link between the condition and the painkiller Tylenol. The Food and Drug Administration said in the US Federal Register that it had approved leucovorin, a concentrated form of folic acid. Folic acid is commonly given to expectant mothers for the healthy development of the babies. All right, now the news. US President Donald Trump has announced that Uzbekistan Airways has signed a deal with Boeing valued at over $8 billion. The agreement includes plans for Uzbekistan Airways to acquire up to 22 Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircraft. Trump said on Truth Social that he spoke with Uzbekistan President earlier this month, while Boeing issued a separate statement confirming the order. US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Canadian Defense Minister David McGauntay met at the Pentagon to discuss the strong defense partnership between their countries. Hegseth emphasized the importance of this relationship in addressing threats to North America, while McGauntay highlighted that the United States remains Canada's closest and most important defense ally. Jimmy Kimmel's late-night talk show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, is set to return to ABC tonight after a brief suspension. The show was halted last week following Kimmel's controversial remarks about conservative activist Charlie Kirk's death, which many criticized as ill-timed and insensitive. The suspension sparked demonstrations with protesters rallying for free speech and accusing the Trump administration of authoritarianism. Trump praised the suspension, calling it a great news for America. Chilean presidential frontrunner Jose Antonio Cast is now making immigration the heart of his campaign. The far-right contestant unveiled a hardline plan he calls Chileans First, vowing to criminalize irregular migration, jail offenders in special prisons, block them from legalizing their status, and tighten controls on money sent abroad. About 125,000 people have crossed Chile's borders in just 3 years. Fueling voter concern, Cast's tough stance contrasts sharply with rival Janet Jara of the Communist Party, who proposes the opposite. Motorcycle rallies usually mean beer, rock and roll, and maybe the odd brawl, but not in northern Portugal. Over the weekend, 180,000 bikers gathered at the Fatima Shrine for the blessing of the helmets, a unique pilgrimage blending faith and road safety. Riders attended mass, spoke about road security, and had their helmets blessed with holy water by the priests. The event offers spiritual protection from the Virgin Mary on Portugal's roads, with nearly 10,000 crashes and 120 fatalities involving motorcyclists last year. This annual ritual is both a plea for safety and a tribute to those lost. Copenhagen Airport, Denmark's largest, has reopened after nearly 4 hours of closure due to sightings of 2 to 3 large drones in its airspace. The drone activity forced suspension of all flights, diverting around 35 departures to other airports. Police are now probing and working to identify the drones. Security remains tight as authorities monitor the situation, causing major disruptions for travelers in the Nordic region. Costa Rica's Congress is debating whether to strip President Rodrigo Chaves of his immunity amid corruption allegations, marking the first time a sitting president in the country faces such a move. The conservative leader in office since 2022 would lose his immunity if at least 38 of the 57 lawmakers vote in favor, although this would not remove him from office. Indigenous groups and farmers in Ecuador blocked roads near La Tacunga, the capital of Cotopaxi province and temporary seat of the national government. The demonstration is a part of a nationwide strike opposing recent hike in diesel prices and demands economic relief from the government. The demonstrations have caused major disruption to transportation in the area. Well, in India, a three-story house has collapsed in Indore's Ranipura area after heavy rains, killing 2 and injuring 12. District collector said 14 family members were trapped in the debris. 12 are receiving treatment at government hospital. Rescue operations lasted 5 hours. The initial report suggests that the building partially rebuilt. It was rather recently rebuilt and was 8 to 10 years old. A portion of the collapsed structure also damaged a neighboring building there. Two Colombian musicians who went missing last week in Mexico have now been found dead. We're talking about Byron Sanchez, known as reggaeton artist B. King, and DJ George Herrera. They were last seen on September 16th in Mexico City's upscale Polanco neighborhood. Their bodies were discovered on September 17th and identified after forensic analysis. A homicide investigation is underway. Germany has committed billions to beefing up its military's equipment after years of neglect. Now it is trying to persuade more people to join up and serve. More than 3 years into the Russia-Ukraine conflict, efforts to modernize and strengthen the German military have intensified, driven by growing concerns over the threat from Moscow.
Drone operator.
Torrential rain struck northern Italy, causing flooding and mudslides. Firefighters evacuated residents from their homes, assisted stranded drivers and cleared debris from rail lines. Video from Lombardy's media there showed streets submerged in water. Authorities continue to monitor the situation and advise caution in the affected areas. Helicopters are aiding rescue efforts in northern Italy. In Milan, crew used amphibious vehicles to safely evacuate around 300 children stranded in schools there. Residents in northern Philippines were evacuated on Monday as Super Typhoon Ragasa brought heavy rains, prompting the Disaster Response Agency to go on full alert. In Ilocos province, the Philippine Coast Guard rescued residents after a river overflowed in the region. India's IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has made a symbolic tech switch by moving his official work to Zoho's Office Suite software. The minister announced a decision on X, saying it was time to adopt Indian software and digital tools, just as India has done in other sectors. Zoho, founded by entrepreneur Sridhar Vembu, is one of India's most successful global companies, offering alternatives to foreign platforms for documents, spreadsheets and collaboration. Vaishnav's move is an endorsement of India's homegrown software ecosystem and a push for digital sovereignty.
And the whole presentation is really good.
In the United States, Google is facing yet another antitrust battle, this time over its dominance in online advertising. A federal judge recently spared the company from being broken up in a separate search monopoly case. Starting this week, a judge in Virginia will hear arguments on whether Google abused its power in ad tech or not. The Justice Department says Google holds nearly 87% of the ad selling market, using its control, publisher tools and ad exchanges to lock out competition. Prosecutors want Google to sell off key software that connects advertisers with websites and even share some of its auction code with rivals. Oil prices held steady Tuesday as markets judged a mixture of supply risks and demand concerns. Brent crude was at about $66.26 a barrel, while US WTI stood near $62.64. Other kind of pressures, including East Asia conflicts and drone strikes on Russian facilities, raised questions over future of the oil supply. But concerns over weak global demand, especially in major importers, and potential trade dampening effects did much to limit price upside. Market participants are also watching export trends, oil inventory data and sanctions that might impact supply flows. Gold futures surged about 2% on Monday to roughly $3,780 an ounce, marking an all-time high as the metal extends its strong 2025 rally up around 40% year to date, although the yellow metal cools a little to $3,741 early on Tuesday. Central banks are loading up on gold, driven by geopolitical tensions, a weakening dollar, trade uncertainty, and shifting interest rate expectations. Deutsche Bank forecasts the price could surpass $4,000 per ounce by the end of 2025, implying a potential annual return above 50%. A survey by the World Gold Council finds that 95% of central bankers expect global gold reserves will rise this year. 43% say their own institutions will raise holdings. None foresee the reductions at this point of time. Asian stocks extended gains Tuesday, riding the global tech wave sparked by Nvidia's $100 billion AI investment in OpenAI. South Korea, Taiwan and Japan led the regional rally, while US markets hit fresh highs overnight. The AI boom is fueling momentum across major tech names like Apple, Oracle and Tesla, drawing in heavy investor flows. And despite mixed signals from the Fed rate cut, bets continue to support equities. Futures suggest another cut in October, with investors eyeing comments from Fed Chair Jerome Powell later today. European markets lag behind but are inching higher, while PMI data and a looming US government shutdown remains key risks ahead.